noticed how some people are always right? Speak for yourself, I hear you saying. Like that newly opened cafe, for instance, which they know is going to be grossly overpriced before stepping inside. Or their favourite radio host, whom they believe has been unfairly dismissed without hearing the full story. Funny, isn't it, how some people like to find proof they were right all along, almost as if their brains were wired that way. Well, today we're diving into something which might just explain it. I'm Philip Anderson with another Talking Point Shorts, which, as you know, is a single topic episode with no guests, so you're going to have to put up with me for the next 10 minutes. Can you do that? And like its epic sister podcast, Talking Point breaks barriers and inspires lives. Ready? Let's do it. Hello, how are you? Where today you find me, in part, practicing my level best at being warm and friendly. Do you think I'm warm and friendly? Well, according to Steve Plowman, I'm a little bit serious. He got in touch with the podcast, email info@talkingpoint.site, to say, love the show, Philip, but you are a tad serious. You do need to loosen up a bit. And then went on to liken me to Michael Burke. He's the presenter of Radio 4's Moral Maze. And don't quote me on this, but did he not also appear on Strictly Come Dancing? Well, either way, I always thought Michael Burke was one of those hard acts to follow. But if unfriendliness is one of his chief characteristics, maybe I should avoid emulating him and look to someone else. Maybe you could recommend me someone. You can email info@talkingpoint.site, or you can send a text or WhatsApp voice note to 07948 568 191. Now remember how I said we knew that cafe would be grossly overpriced? That our favourite radio host was unfairly taken off air? Funny how that works, isn't it? We don't just form opinions, we find ways to prove them right, whether or not the facts support them. And that, my friend, is what is known as confirmation bias. It's our brain's way of saying, I would rather be right than open-minded. It's the tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information that supports what we already believe, while brushing aside those bits we don't. In this episode, we're going to explore 3 key areas. First, we'll uncover what confirmation bias actually is, and why our brains are wired this way. Then we'll dig into why we have it in the first place, what purpose it serves. And finally, we'll look at how it plays out in modern life, and whether there's anything we can do to counter it. As someone studying philosophy and psychological studies with the Open University, I often come across concepts which don't just sit neatly within textbooks. They pop up in everyday life, shaping the way we think, react, and even argue. In his book, Cat and Mouse, the 4th in his Alex and Cross series, James Patterson said, "Assume nothing and question everything." Yet, as much as we would like to think of ourselves as open-minded, our brains very often do the opposite. We assume, we selectively seek out what supports our beliefs, and ignore, or at least downplay at best, that which does not fit. Take that overpriced cafe. You walk in, already convinced it's going to cost you a small fortune, and what do you notice? The extortionate price of a cappuccino. And what do you ignore? The reasonably priced sandwich deal. Aww. Your beliefs get reinforced, even if the full picture tells a different story. Psychologists call it a cognitive shortcut, a way of making sense of the world quickly without the constant need of second-guessing ourselves. In one study published in the Psychological Bulletin, researchers found that when people recall information, they remembered the details that align with their expectations far more than the details that contradicted them. The result? Their beliefs grew stronger even when those beliefs weren't entirely accurate. So confirmation bias is like a built-in filter. It lets in what fits our beliefs and blocks out what doesn't. But why does our brain do this? Surely, if we assume nothing and question everything, we'd make better decisions. So why does our brain insist on playing this little game called confirmation bias? Let's take a step back, way back, to a time when life was all about survival. Picture our ancestors navigating a world filled with unknowns. A rustling in the bushes. It could be the wind, or it could be something with very sharp teeth. Those who assumed the worst and took action, running, hiding, or grabbing at a hefty stick, were the ones who survived. Unlike those who stood around debating probabilities. What happened to them? Let's just say they didn't pass on their genes. And that's where confirmation bias comes in. Our brains evolved to make fast, instinctive decisions, to seek patterns, confirm existing beliefs, and avoid wasting precious time second-guessing everything. It helped us stay alive. But in today's world where rustling bushes are more likely caused by a nosy hedgehog than a lurking predator, this same mental shortcut isn't always as helpful. And there's another problem. Challenging our deeply held beliefs isn't just mentally exhausting, it can be damn right uncomfortable. Take the study published in Nature Communication. It found that when people were presented with information that contradicted their political beliefs, their brains lit up in areas associated with emotion and stress. It's as if our brains are saying, "Nope, that doesn't fit with my version of reality, and I'd rather not deal with it." So instead of questioning ourselves, we seek out what confirms what we already think. Because it feels good. It's easy. So our brains developed confirmation bias as a survival mechanism, helping us make quick decisions and avoid the mental discomfort of uncertainty. But in our modern world, is this bias still serving us, or could it be leading us astray? So, from ancient survival instincts and modern-day mental shortcuts brings us nicely on to confirmation bias in everyday life. Here we're going to look at three key areas: social media echo chambers, the justice system, and personal health. Now, if you've ever wondered why your social media feed gets you, That's because it's meant to. Algorithms are designed to show you content similar to what you'd previously engaged with. Let's say you'd liked a few articles on organic farming. Suddenly, you're seeing post after post confirming organic farming is the only way forward. And anything else to suggest otherwise? Nowhere in sight. It's as though they're feeding you the truth, but in reality, it's just a reflection of what you already believe.
All rise.
Likewise with our justice system. Our courtrooms are alive with confirmation bias, which can have serious consequences.
Court is now in session.
Take your typical investigator. Imagine early on they've decided a particular suspect is guilty. Suddenly, every piece of evidence starts looking like it's supporting that decision, and anything contradicting it gets brushed aside. In fact, this review, published in the Journal of Applied Research in Memory and Cognition, supports this. Whilst it highlights how law enforcement and legal professionals are trained to recognize bias in decision-making, it still remains a challenge in real-world cases. Even doctors aren't immune to confirmation bias. Imagine you go to your GP with a set of symptoms. If your doctor quickly settles on a diagnosis based on initial impressions, they might just focus on evidence that supports their hunch and overlook signs pointing to something else. In the study, a new model for categorizing confirmation bias, published in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology, found medical professionals, when forming diagnoses, tend to unconsciously favor data that supports their initial thoughts, thus potentially overlooking critical information. In other words, even doctors are not immune to the vagaries of confirmation bias. And so we've reached the finale. What have we learned? That confirmation bias shapes the way we engage with information, make decisions, and even determine guilt or innocence. So, is there a way of breaking free from it? Can we train our minds to see beyond our own bias? Well, the first step in overcoming confirmation bias is knowing it exists. They do say forewarned is forearmed. Being aware of our natural tendency to seek out what we want to believe means we can take active steps to challenge it. Keep an open mind. Read news from different sources and ask yourself, what would change my mind? And most importantly, be open to the possibility that sometimes, just sometimes, you may not always be right. Well, that's it. We're out of time. I'm Philip Anderson, editor, producer, and technical choreographer. We've licensed and branded music by Leto, L-E-T-O. Check them out on Audio Jungle. And if you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, our email address, info@talkingpoint.site. Don't forget, we're always looking for people to get involved, and if it is you have any expertise you feel you can bring to the table, we'd love to have you on board. You can contact us by WhatsApp or text on 07 948 568 191. Talking Point is the property of Philip Francis Anderson, available on your smart speaker and wherever it is you happen to consume your media. If it is you haven't subscribed, can I encourage you to do so? It does help others to find us. Well, whatever it is you're doing, do it safely, and until next time, take care. Bye-bye.